Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Nerdy. Today is Monday, May 30th, 2022, and I'm the host of the show, Cara Santa Maria. And as always, before we dive into this week's episode, I want to thank those of you who make Talk Nerdy work. You make it possible so that I can put out a show every single week and so that we don't have to charge for the show. Because of people like you who can support the show financially, you offset that burden for the folks who can't. So this week, I do want to give a really big shout out to my top patrons. They include Daniel Lang, David J.E. Smith, Mary Neva, Brian Holden, Dudas Infinitas, Gabrielle F. Jaramillo Gonzalez, Joe Wilkinson, June Sapara, Leonard Prince, Pasquale Gelati, and Ulrika Hagman. Thank you all so much. You make this show, possible. I mean, we're on, what is this? This is episode 509. Can you believe that? I can't. I really can't believe it. And this week we have a great one for you. So I'm really excited that I had the opportunity this week to sit down, virtually of course, because she's in Canada, with Emma Asiedu-Akrofi. Now, she is the executive director of the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment. She is committed to community development. She studied political science and sociology from the University of Toronto, and she's worked across fields from project management to risk to governance and program development and beyond. But right now she's working, she's running really the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment in an effort to support young women in the region and also across Canada. She works from an anti-oppressive, inclusive framework, and she really does have a deep commitment to celebrating gender equality, empowerment of self-identified females, and youth-based programming. So she's going to tell us a lot today about what it means to empower young women, especially supporting them in STEM fields. So without any further ado, here she is, Emma Asiedu-Akrofi. Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking not just about the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment, but also International Day of the Girl. And, why that matters. This is like a topic that I feel like I often touch on in different episodes. I shouldn't say often. It's almost like every week, some area of the empowerment of young women, or even kind of sadly, the equal and opposite, which is not just the empowerment, but the safety, the security, the protection of young women across the globe. It is an important conversation, but I'm excited to be focusing the hour on it with you. So maybe first and foremost, you can tell us, what is the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment?
Okay, where do I start? I always like to give the historical context before I delve into what we do, because our namesake is the reason that we have it. And for those who aren't familiar with the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, it's really important that I share who she is and what she's done and how it evolved into the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment. So if you can spare a few minutes, and I'll just jump into that. So for those who aren't aware, if you're not aware, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, she's from Grenada. And I always start with saying that she'll be 85 in September.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, 85 in September. And she hails from Grenada. And she came to Canada in her 20s as a nanny. So she came to Canada as a nanny. Within that, she became a teacher within the Toronto Catholic District School Board. So that's the Toronto School Board. That's where we are. And then she became a principal for the school board. And through that, she realized there was so much impact that she could make and people wanted her to make. Because if you ever meet her, if you haven't already, you just gravitate towards her. She's so powerful and confident and just such a solid representation of women and a woman of color. So she delved into politics. She got into politics. And long story short, she became the first Black woman in federal government in Canada. So huge. So she was under our Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien. And she served in government for over 8 years. And within government, she was the Minister of Women, and she did so much for underrepresented groups, such as women, people of color, you name it. Really a champion for the people. And so after she retired from politics, she still wanted to do so much more for Canada, and especially for the riding which she represented in government, which is Etobicoke Lakeshore. That's like this little pocket of Toronto where we're located. So when she got out of politics, she then decided she saw the need in this immediate area for programs to empower young women, to get them off the street, so to speak, or to engage them and connect them with mentors and opportunities. And so she, with the support of a philanthropist, created the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment. And what we are is we're literally, as in our name, we empower young women and girls. So we work with girls between the ages of 7 all the way to 17. So we get girls when they're very young, when outside influences are starting to creep in, social media, friends, all these negative influences might start to creep into a young woman's experience. So we get them young, and we provide programs that cover, we want to holistically empower young women. So the girls that come into our center represent all races, all backgrounds, all socioeconomic households. So it's literally a center for young women and girls. And they come in, and there's programs that range from mentorship. We're huge on STEM, as I hope to talk about, where we do life skills, mental health. We cover the gamut of empowerment programs for young women and girls. And we do this year round. So we have a dedicated space and a dedicated mission to empower and to provide them with these opportunities.
As the executive director, that means you kind of run the ship?
I do.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, how does one become the executive director of a really, really important program like this? I mean, this must be, there must have been a lot of influences that brought you to this place.
It's funny because it's a fancy title, but running the ship is relative. I'm also unplugging the toilets and making sure, there's so much more to executive director than in its name, and how I got into it. So my background, I am Ghanaian. I was born in Canada, but my parents are from Ghana, and they came to Canada. And as many people of African descent know, when you have children, you want them to either become a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. So I went into university thinking, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to take all the courses. I'm going to, this is what I'm going to do when I finish my undergrad. And then I got into university and realized I hate writing. I don't hate writing, but I don't love writing multi-page essays and reports. And I realized this is not what I want to do. So there were some tears between myself and my parents. A few tears when I communicated to them that, this is not for me. And so I graduated, and I took the first job that I could find, because my major was political science and sociology. And the first job I could find out of university was in insurance. That, they were the first people that would hire me. And definitely not knocking anyone who's in insurance. If you love it, I love it for you, but it's not for me. So I got into insurance and realized, no, this is not what I want to do with my life. And so what I was able to do, and this is why it was stressed to the girls at the center, is talk to people, connect, find your mentors. Because what I was able to do was I pivoted from doing corporate risk, so corporate insurance, to getting into an organization, the YMCA of Greater Toronto. I'm sure there's YMCAs all across, so people are very familiar with the work they do. And so I went into the YMCA of Greater Toronto doing risk management. So I was still doing insurance-related work, but I was able to do it go from being in a for-profit to being in a not-for-profit setting. And I loved the YMCA. I was still doing policy work and insurance work, and really not what I wanted to do. But I was in this organization where they were committed to empowering communities and bettering, and the people there are so passionate about what they do. So I did that. And as I was doing my work, I was also connecting with other departments to learn about what they were doing. I was joining the committees. I was, really networking. And not networking for the sake of career advancement, but really because I was interested in that stuff and I really wanted to learn more. And so, long story short, I connected with who is now a really good friend of mine, to let her know, like, yeah, like I want to get out of risk management. I really want to get into this like front facing working with people. And she saw this great opportunity at the Jean Augustine Centre. And at that time, I'd built up my skills, like not only from like risk management and understanding how to run an organization from a risk perspective, but also like the committees I was joining for the community, et cetera, et cetera. And so, long story short, I applied for the job, interviewed for the job, and it's been 6 years since, and it's been a great experience.
Oh, I love that. And so I'm curious about some of the things that, since you've been there, you have kind of spearheaded, or some of the programs, the different offerings that the center have. You mentioned mentorship was so important, and also you mentioned how central STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math are to the program's mission.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm going to pause for a second.
Of course. Anytime.
Can you just repeat the question again?
Of course.
Thank you.
I was sort of just trying to cue you up to talk a little bit about STEM and about maybe some of the, I don't want to say changes, but like some of the things that have been sort of your babies since you've been there.
Yeah, like in the past 6 years since like I've joined, the organization has grown so much. And I don't say that because of me. It's just like we as a collective, as an organization, have grown so much. When I started, I was the employee. There was only me. I was myself, and there was someone who has become a dear friend of mine who worked part-time. And since then, like, we've grown. We're still a very small organization, but we've grown in terms of our program offerings and our staff and our board of directors and just our general outreach. And so what I've seen in the last 6 years, like the evolution of our programs, which I'm very proud of like, one of the things we really focus on here is STEM. Our goal is to really be a center of excellence for STEM for young women and girls within Toronto, but one day across Canada and then internationally. Like, we have big goals, lofty goals. So we really, really champion and focus on providing girls and especially from underrepresented communities. So Black girls, girls of color, girls, with barriers, socioeconomic barriers, with opportunities to participate and get to know STEM. So we do coding, engineering, we do various arts-based STEM-related programs as well. As a shameless plug, like we're running on June 11th and June 18th. Those are Saturdays. We're doing our first conference for girls in STEM, where I call it the Coachella of STEM. Because it's really important for us to make STEM cool and accessible for girls. So we're going to have like food and musical performances, while they're also going to get to connect and do like STEM related workshops and meet women in the field. And it's going to be like a full experience for young women. And so like, we're always trying to make STEM cool and accessible for our girls. And this is open to girls across Toronto. So if they're looking for more information, they can visit us on our website. So yeah, we're big on STEM, but we also do so many other things here. Like, one of the things I'm very proud of, as you know, for everyone, COVID beat us down, like mentally and emotionally. It was tough. It was tough for me. And I know in particular, it was tough for youth. And so we really recognized that need. And so we really wanted to do something to support these girls in coming out of COVID in the most healthiest way possible. So we created a formal mentorship program. Like, we always have had informal mentorship, but we created a formal peer mentorship program. It's like a big sisters program where we're matching older young women with younger ones, and they're going to be working together for a year in a relationship that they connect weekly. We're going to have mental health workshops for them. We're going to have give them access to counseling and therapy. We're going to give them field trips. We want it to be fun as well, but it really be to address social isolation, which was huge. Everyone was in their own homes in front of a screen, and really, just help them in supporting them with the mental health tools that they need. So those are like two of the biggest things that we do at the center that I'm very, very proud of. But we also do so much more. Like we have yoga, we do dance, we do art space. We are big on life skills here as well. Like we do full cooking programs. And one thing I'm super proud of is like during the pandemic, again, we're all locked away in our homes. The cooking program here has always been very successful. Like if you ever have a chance, come visit our space in Little Toronto, and we're in Toronto, and it's like we have a full commercial kitchen. And so pre-COVID, the girls were always in the kitchen and they loved to cook. And I always side note that people would say, like you're a girls center, why are you encouraging like cooking and sewing? And like we've gotten the critiques, why are we pushing these like traditional programs for girls? And our thing is always, it's not that we're trying to make anyone a homemaker or to pigeonhole them into these archaic roles for women and girls, but we're trying to provide people with life skills. Everyone needs to know how to feed themselves. Uber is expensive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the issue isn't that girls are learning, basic life skills. It's that boys aren't. And maybe some centers for boys should be learning about cooking and sewing and all of these basic life capabilities.
Exactly. So we do our cooking program. So and the girls have loved it. And so when COVID hit, we were like, how do we continue to do this? And so what we did, that word pivot, which I resent the word pivot now because I feel like I've used it a million times, but it's what we did. We pivoted to that online model where we had our chef instructor working from home, and she had this great setup, and the girls were in their own kitchens, and we'd give them the kits. So like if you can't afford to buy the groceries and the recipes, we would send them to them. And for 6 weeks long, each session, these girls were getting together weekly to cook and to laugh and to share. And then they would send us pictures of the meals they made for their family. And it was just a way for them not only to build those life skills, but to also help them to continue to feel connected to community. So those are just three high level of the things I'm really proud of in the last bit since I've been here. But I could go on and on and on about like all the cool stuff that we're doing at the Jean Augustine Centre.
So I'm curious, and I know that this, is not your area of expertise, but maybe even just like some top line understanding for the listeners of my show who are spread all over the world, predominantly in English speaking countries, but definitely we have listenership literally everywhere. I would say that the bulk, the maybe just over 50% of my listeners hail from the United States. And many of us have at least a cursory understanding of the, let's say how do I put this? The kind of history and the cultural pressures of different racial and ethnic groups within the U.S. So, we often can identify, especially if you are steeped in the sort of academic literature, that the U.S. has long been a white supremacist culture. It's long been a culture that the term we often use in psychology is like ethnocentric monocultural, right? That like white has been normative and everybody else has been othered. And our history, of course, is deeply built upon the slave trade here in the U.S. And so when we talk about African Americans specifically, we talk about a long and oppressive history there. And I'm curious, about a cursory maybe explanation of ethnic diversity in Canada and the differences maybe between the U.S. and Canada with regards to cultural normativity and what you're really pushing back against when you do make sure that you're targeting girls, but especially girls of color in your country.
Yeah, sure. So the way I've grown up and the way many in Canada would describe Canada as opposed to the US would be, we have always, proudly said that we're a mosaic, we're very embracing of various cultures and backgrounds, and we celebrate these cultures. So that's what we've said. That is the statement we've put forward, that Canada very much celebrates different cultures and backgrounds. In reality, there is some truth to that. We are very much a mosaic, where if you ever come, especially city of Toronto, if you ever have the chance to come to Toronto, you'll find every race, every background, every culture here, and people are encouraged to celebrate their history and their background in Toronto. As again, being a Ghanaian, like I was born in Edmonton, but raised in Toronto. And I've always had my Ghanaian community here. We have our foods, we have our cultural celebrations, like we have our community centers. Like we are very much connected, and I proudly wear the badge of a Ghanaian woman. But with that said, we still have our issues, where when you go into certain spaces, be it the corporate world or certain environments, where we're not as easily accepted or as readily accepted, and it's not as easily we're not as easily able to share our culture openly and widely. Just to give you an example, I know it's something that many Black women have spoken about, is even just the whole issue around hair and representation of Black women in hair, and going into certain spaces and feeling like afros or braids are not seen as appropriate, where we have to wear our hair straight and long, or just to fit into the norm of what the culture of that environment is. And so these are issues that we've struggled with, and there's so many of these examples that you've probably spoken about that I've experienced and many have experienced. Like there's the whole issue around colorism and representation, and when we do see a person of color or a Black woman or a person, it's a lighter skinned woman. It's that's the representation of who a Black woman is, and there's nothing wrong. Black women come in every shape, race, size, and we are all Black. However, it's what media and what society has pushed forward as the representation of who we are. So the point I'm trying to make is, though, at the Jean Augustine Centre, what makes us so powerful, I believe, is that here we are a Black-led organization, but we focus on supporting all girls. But we are very much Black-led. Like the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine is a dark-skinned Black woman. I am a dark-skinned Black woman who wears an afro. And this representation, although very small, is very significant for when young women walk through the doors and they see that, we haven't conformed into what society expects us to be. Like, I'm not wearing my hair straight. We're not trying to fit into these roles. And this is the representation we try and have in our staff, in our volunteers, and just the general community, so that when girls walk through the door, they see that, they can be accepted for who they are, whatever their background, whatever their skin color, whatever their race. There's a space for them, and there's a space for them at the top in leadership positions. It's super important for us to provide that representation to girls as young as 7, because this is when this information is really internalized. Like, you start to pick up on these cues about what's appropriate and what's accepted. And so we really want to challenge that narrative from a very young age.
Absolutely. I mean, you're so hitting on this important concept of like both the implicit and the explicit. Like, it is important to have a place where you can, have a forum to talk about microaggressions, to talk about the rocky road ahead, to talk about the fact that like we're not all starting from the same starting line, that there are barriers that young girls, especially young girls of color, are going to face in their life, and to be very explicit about that, and to not sort of minimize that is the reality. And on top of that, to have these more implicit examples where you are seeing people in leadership positions that look like you. Because if you don't see that, you're never going to be able to accept that it could be you. Like, you're going to have to be a trailblazer. And that's a lot of pressure to put on, everybody can't be the first. And sadly, we're still in 2022 living in a time of firsts for young women, and especially young women of color. Like, we still haven't had a female president in the US. We've had one Black president in the US, and he was a man. And that's, obviously a very visible position, but so often, as you mentioned, even in corporations, even in organizations where there are Black women working, at either the ground level or maybe, oh, it's the chief diversity officer. Like, of course, she's a
Exactly.
Black
Yeah.
woman, but we're not seeing the C-suite otherwise. It's still white men. And so to be able to see that is, I mean, it's never going to change unless girls see that that's a possibility for themselves.
Yeah, very much so. Like that's totally it. Like I didn't know this. Like when I was growing up, did I see it? My mother was a nurse and I love nurses, but like I knew that wasn't the field I wanted to get into. So where was my representation? Like who could I look to know that I could achieve this? And so that's why it's so important to have these models and these mentors at that young age.
Absolutely. And to have so many women. I mean, I'm looking at your, just on your website, like the staff and how pretty much every person working there is a woman. And there's, representation from across kind of the gender and the racial spectrum. Like you said, at the very tippy top. And of course, you're the executive director. And for girls to be able to come in and say, oh, like you're in charge. Like you're in charge. Like you have power, you have control, you're able to make sure that your voice is heard and listened to and respected. I mean, this is something that has way more implications than I think we often give credit to. It's not just something explicit. It's something that psychologically permeates in a very, very deep way. And we're clearly not there yet culturally. We're not there yet where little girls across the spectrum see people like them in positions of power and authority. But this is a building block towards that. I mean, you are running an organization that's there to empower women, and you are running it absolutely the right way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to share a quick story that as you're speaking, it came up. So we always do summer camps at our center year round, summer round from July to August. And they're very busy times. It's hot here. We don't have central air conditioning, so it's hot. People are crowded. And so during lunch, the kids are sitting everywhere eating their lunch. And there was one young girl. She's like me. She was born in Canada, but her parents are Ghanaian. And she brought her lunch and she's warming it. And then she knows that we're from the same country. So she proudly, like, she warms her lunch. She's like, Emma, look, I have jollof rice. And she was so proud. And that little thing just warmed my heart. Because when I was a child and I had to bring cultural foods to like school, I was, shrouding in the corner. I was embarrassed because there was no one that was like me. My teachers didn't have, weren't a representation of where I came from. Like some of my friends were, but overall, like in positions of leadership, I didn't see anyone like me. So to see her so proud of like sharing and showing the cultural food that we have both grown up eating, and it piqued the other children's interest. They're like, "What's jollof? What is this?" And she was so proud to tell them about this food that we eat in our country. And it's like little things like that you don't see the importance of, and that but it's so important for the healthy development of young girls to be able to see themselves and not only their friends, but also, as you said, like leadership and staff and so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah. And that's even something I didn't think about. But of course, this being an organization that's all about fostering and developing and empowering young women, they're surrounded by other girls. And of course, some girls are going to be lucky enough to be living in a community where there are other girls from the same background. And some girls are going to be at maybe an all white school or a school where they don't get exposure to other kids whose parents are similar to theirs or who grew up in a similar neighborhood. And so not just that that representation at the highest levels of leadership, but also just socialization, especially amongst the backdrop of the pandemic, which of course has negatively impacted socialization from the littlest littles to teenagers and beyond. Like I'm not good at it anymore. I've forgotten how to be social, And so having the opportunity for these girls to be around other girls who look like them, who sound like them, and other girls who don't look anything like them and don't sound anything like them. And to have that exposure is just massive for positive development.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And that's what we encourage here. Like, I proudly always say that, like, if you ever come into our center when we have programs, you'll see every girl, every background at this organization. Like, truly, truly, we're in our name, a center for girls and young women. So, yeah, the exposure is so needed on the social and the developmental level.
And not to put you on the spot, but of course, I'm curious what you often say because you must get this kind of pushback. Maybe it's not as bad where you live, but I'm just envisioning your organization being like in the southern U.S. or something, and hearing the pushback that you may receive about, well, why do we need something that's just for girls, or why do we need something that's just for girls of color, and isn't the way to be inclusive, and isn't the way to have representation to not make it so narrow and to make it for everybody? Like, how do you respond to that kind of criticism, if you even get it?
Oh, we get it. We get it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's done in a more polite way sometimes, most of the time, but we definitely get the question. And like, literally, that's why if you on our homepage on the website, if you scroll down, we have something that literally just gives a few very high level points about why we empower girls and like why it's so important to have a dedicated space for girls. And like the rundown of what I tell people when we get this question is like, this space is needed because girls at this moment, young women at this moment, or women, we are not on an equal footing to men. Like, you know, as you said, it's 2022 and there's still so many firsts that we have not achieved. So we need to have a dedicated space, a focused space where girls have the opportunity to get access to these things, and you know, to get access to mentors and opportunities and skill development that will hopefully launch them into these opportunities to be the first. Hopefully it happens sooner than later, but it's so important that we provide them with this exposure. And we also want to give them a safe space. You know, safe is relative. People, you know, safe is subjective, but we try our best to provide a space where girls can flourish. You know, when they walk through the door, they can drop their school bag and they can feel comfortable. They can talk to us about, I have cramps today and I don't feel well, or whatever. Like, we want to have these very natural and organic conversations that you're not always able to have if you have boys in the room, or if you have the majority of male instructors or staff. Like, so we want to give them a space for that. And we also, at the center, as many people know, not only in North America, but throughout the world, if you teach a girl, you can break the cycle of poverty in families. You know, this girl will go back and she will share it with her siblings, and she will share it with her parents, and the learnings and the experiences that she gained are not retained just to her. Like, it is distributed throughout the family. So by empowering her, we're able to empower a family. An example, an example of that would be like, we've had a family, just one in particular that I'm thinking of, where English was not their first language. Like, parents, you know, English wasn't their first language. The child was the one, she came here we supported her in learning to read because her parents, English wasn't the first language, so they weren't able to support her in this way. So it was really important for us to be able to provide that support and that guidance for her. And when she goes home, then she could read to her parents, you know? And so they're everyone, and she can read to her siblings as well, which she did. She had little siblings. So it's really about supporting the family and breaking the cycle of poverty.
Absolutely. And there's a statement that's right here on the front page that says, society benefits when girls have equal access to opportunities. And really, that statement is so encompassing. Like, it's so powerful. So it's not just that the family can potentially be brought up out. It can, like you said, break that cycle of poverty. And it's not just that the individual girls within the family can see their worth and can make better family planning decisions, can be empowered to vote for, you know, what's best for them or for their families. But ultimately, that has a downstream effect on all of society. That when 50% of the population has equal access, which we're nowhere near there yet, but we're working towards it. When we do see parity for half of the population, society as a whole is benefited economically. It's benefited from an egalitarian perspective, from a social perspective, from an empathic perspective. It doesn't just improve our lives; it literally improves everybody's lives.
Yes, very much so. And this is something the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, like if you hear her speak about the organization, she says it so much more eloquently than I do. So much more. But this is her message. And this is the reason she created the Jean Augustine Center, is because she wanted gender parity. And that's the goal. And that's something the United Nations has really, challenged us to achieve. And this is what we're trying to do our small part at the Jean Augustine Center.
And so tell me a little bit about that. What is the relationship, the connection to the United Nations, to the International Day of the Girl? What's the relationship there?
And so there's no formal relationship. The United Nations is a body that, we look to for information on just the experience of women and girls internationally. And through that, we always follow what their theme is for International Day of the Girl. And we do something that corresponds with what they've set as International Day of the Girl for each year. So, for example, last year, 2021, all the years are blurring into one.
Right, I know.
All the
No
years
sense of time.
Yeah, they're blurring into one. So International Day of the Girl for 2021 was digital generation, our generation. So the Jean Augustine Center, we piggybacked off of that to really focus on girls in STEM. So we had a full day of STEM opportunities and programming for young women at our center. We were doing everything from engineering. They were building bridges with popsicle sticks, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm butchering so I'm giving the layman's terms of what they were doing. But they were building bridges. They were doing coding. They were doing. We have this program at the center. It's called Craftastic Market, where it's a social entrepreneurship program, and they learn to make soaps and candles. And but we really encourage the science perspective of it. Like, what are you learning through putting these colors together or these materials together? So they were doing the Craftastic Market program as well. And it was really to just pique their mind and their interest in STEM. And to align it with the United Nations International Day of the Girl. And so we do that every year. At our center, and we hope one day to have a bigger or a collaborative opportunity, or to work closely with the United Nations. But for now, we're doing our baby steps to get there.
Yeah, and it's great that there are these organizations, these larger global organizations who have the never have enough resources, but have some of the resources to look at the literature and to say, these are the most pressing challenges this year. These are the things that we feel like if we can make an impact in these areas, we'll get the biggest bang for our buck. It'll be the largest investment in the future of our young women across the globe. And also, I think to have a more global perspective can be really important, because so often we do narrowly focus on, exactly what's going on within our communities or exactly what's going on within our country. But to be able to say, these are the places where we're getting it right, or these are the places where we're noticing that communities across the globe are struggling, but we've been able to make strides. I think it can actually help with the motivation, with the maintaining a positive outlook, because it can be, as exciting as it is to be around all these like incredible young women that must just fill your heart with joy every day. I can imagine that there are days where you feel frustrated about the fact that it is 2022 and we're still living in a world where violence against women is normalized, where lack of opportunity is very much the norm, not the exception to the norm. I mean, that must sometimes really gnaw at you.
Yeah, it's infuriating. Like, even when you were just mentioning in the United States that you haven't had your first female president, and like I know in Canada we did have a prime minister who was a woman for a short period, but we still at that political high level haven't had that prime minister who has served a 4-year term or so on and so forth. So there's still a lot of work for us to do. So it's infuriating. We're in 2022. Like we have phones that can unlock our doors miles away, but with technology has advanced so much, but society hasn't in a way, and it needs to. And we try and put it into perspective, and we celebrate the wins that we do have and we have achieved, but there's still so much more for us to do.
Absolutely. And so tell me a little bit here as we're sort of coming close to the end of our conversation. I'm curious what some of the goals, what some of the ambitions, what you're looking forward to in the future as you continue your work with the organization, and maybe even beyond what you specifically do, what some of your goals and hopes are for the future of girls and women across the planet.
Yeah, for the Jean Augustine Centre as an organization, like we're very new. Like we started in 2014, so we're June will be our 8th year doing this work. So we've seen our young women grow over this last 8 years, and one of the goals that we have is to see them go from participants, joining at such a young age, to now they are volunteers and they're camp counselors, and as they get older, for them to return to the program as facilitators and as mentorship to really see that life cycle of the program and how they can impart then the knowledge that they've gained and the experience they've gained onto the younger groups. It's so important for us to develop that model, and so we're in the process of completing that cycle over the next few years. So that's one of the goals we have. So for our young girls who started with us at a young age to continue on and to continue to be a part of the Jean Augustine Center. We also want to grow. Like we're very much so. We are located in Etobicoke, which is it is a part of Toronto. Um, and through COVID, we scaled across the Greater Toronto area. So that was other cities within the Greater Toronto. But we believe in what we're doing, and we want to scale across Canada. We're already starting. We connect and do various workshops in other regions of Canada. But one day to see a Jean Augustine Centre in every province, every major city, doing this kind of work is something that we aspire to do, and just so that more girls will have access to opportunities. It's always about the girls, right? We want to give girls an opportunity to get mentored, to find life skills, to reduce these barriers that continue the cycle of poverty is so important for us. As a whole, just in terms of what we want for young women and girls, we want to see young women and girls achieve whatever they want to achieve. We always say, we want a girl to reach her fullest potential. It's not what we think a girl should achieve, but what she wants to do is super important for us. So we want every young woman and girl to be able to reach her fullest potential, whatever that may be. And that's the goal. That's really the goal. So if you want to be a teacher, if you want to be a carpenter, if you want to be the Prime Minister of Canada or the President of the United States, we're with you, and we will support you in that journey.
So I'm curious, I mean, this can't be inexpensive, having
Mhm.
these community programs and having, like you mentioned, these sort of like summer boot camps that you do and all of the marketing that's probably required. How do you fund the projects that you do at the center?
We are. It is not cheap.
Right.
It's not cheap. We are a charity, so we're a registered charity, and we really take that diversification. Like, so we do a lot of fundraising. We really rely on the support of our donors, which we've had some great donors, and we're always looking for others who believe in our mission to support us through donations. That can be done on our website. If you go, there's like the donate button front and center. And the one-time donations or the monthly donations really help us to be able to plan and to be able to ensure the sustainability of our organization. We also apply for grants. We're always grant writing. Looking for opportunities to do some funding, to attain funding that way. And then we also do major events. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have our STEM conference for girls on June 11th and June 18th. Those are both Saturdays. And for that, we've like really put it out to the community, just looking for people who will sponsor this event, sponsor a child to attend this event. If they can't afford the $20 ticket, if someone can pay for it on their behalf, like that gives a girl an opportunity to participate. So we really run the gamut of how we try and raise money for the organization, but we are in need. It is something, as a charity, we're always looking for that support.
Yeah, and it looks like volunteers as well, right? Because you've got a lot of volunteers who actually help run these different programs and help mentor and I'm sure there's just always a need for people to give their woman hours as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we're a very small team, very small staff. So we truly rely on our volunteers. We couldn't do it without them. Like we have a great network of volunteers, both men and women, but our women volunteers, we really, we have a great group of volunteers who really support the programs. They are the backbone of our programming. They facilitate, they are assistants. They help us we have a community garden. So on Monday we have about 15 to 30 volunteers that are going to come out and help us plant and just do some general maintenance of our center. And volunteers are the backbone of what we do.
I love it. I love it. And so everybody listening right now, you visit the website and you can look like you said, as little as $20, you can actually sponsor a girl to be able to go and meet people her age, meet older individuals, learn some STEM skills and really start to get those wheels turning at this young age, which is just so important to say, I can do this. I will do this. And I have a future ahead of me. Not just for me, but for my family and for my community. I mean, it's just absolutely huge. Well, Emma, I've got to ask you, because I always close my episodes by asking my guests the same two questions. And I'm really curious for your take on these two questions. And they're sort of big picture. So if you need to take a couple seconds, that's fine. But are you ready to answer some big picture questions?
I hope so. I'll give it my best shot.
So I want to know, when you think about the future and, looking forward, and this can be in whatever context you like. So it could be very personal. It can have to do with the work that you do. It can be community-based, global, I don't know, even cosmic. Really just depends on where you're feeling right now. So when you think about the future, number one, what is the thing that really is keeping you up the most at night? The thing you're most concerned about, worried about, maybe even pessimistic or borderline cynical about? And then on the flip side of that, so that we end on a more positive note, where are you finding your hope, your optimism? What are you truly looking forward to?
Wow, those are tough questions. So what is keeping me up at night? There's many things, like even before I get into what generally keeps up at night, like just what recently happened in Texas with the school shooting, like that kept me up last night. And it's something that as a staff we were talking about, like it's again back to 2022. It's unbelievable that we are still facing where children cannot even go to school and be safe. Like it's crazy. Like that, I don't even have the words. Like I'm still processing what has happened. So that has definitely kept me up at night. But in general, I think it leads into, mental health and peace of mind. Like we've all struggled. I don't want to put words in my mouth. I know I struggled within COVID in terms of mental health, and I've seen it with girls and youth in general and friends and family. So like how to support someone with their mental health. It's not something everyone talks about, right? And especially culturally, with a lot of the times it's not addressed. Or, if you're of a certain religious background, sometimes it's more so like give it to God and that's it. But I think it's something that really needs to be spoken about outwardly. It needs to be normalized that mental health is something that we all experience and we've all at one point in time have struggled with. And how do we get the supports that we need for that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a huge, huge issue that's pressing, and obviously one near and dear to my heart as I'm training to be a clinical psychologist and seeing firsthand, doing therapy throughout the pandemic and seeing firsthand the toll that it's had on all of us. And of course, these, as you mentioned, these like systematic um, uh, oppressions, these systematic experiences that women and people of color have faced throughout all of human history, this affects our mental health. This in a deep and meaningful way, and I'm with you. This is something where it's sometimes hard to see the light. So I'm curious, on the flip side of that, where are you finding your hope and your positivity?
I find it everywhere. Like I literally do. That the flip side of the challenge of the pandemic is that it's really grounded me in looking for the small joys and the small wins in life. Like having an extra 5 minutes in bed to pray and to meditate and just take that time is encouraging. Coming to the center and seeing the girls just laughing over the most random thing, it brings me joy. I really gain joy from that. Like going to the grocery store, and even as we have our masks on, seeing someone actually make eye contact and do what I call is the smiles, like smiling with their eyes.
I
And
love that.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the human connection. Like I think that brings me joy, like human connection and having the time to pause and really just process and just soak in and be grateful for like the moment is so
Yeah,
important. Like one thing
absolutely.
I'll end with, like my motto these days is one day at a time. Like literally just take it one day at a time and find the small joys within that day. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, well, everybody, I first of all, I just want to thank you, Emma, for being here with us and for telling us about your mission and your journey and the important work that you guys are doing at the Jean Augustine Centre for Young Women's Empowerment. And I really do encourage everybody to visit at Jean Augustine Centre, and that's spelled the Canadian way,
Yes.
CENTRE.ca. And there you can learn more about the Educate to Innovate STEAM conference that's coming up. You can learn more about the mission of the organization. And of course, you can donate or shop or volunteer, especially if you're in the local area. Emma, thank you so much. It was really enlightening, and I'm just really grateful for the important work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak about what I love, about the Jean Augustine Center for Young Women's Empowerment, and just the empowerment of women and girls in general. So thank you.
Absolutely. And everyone listening, thank you for coming back week after week. I'm really looking forward to the next time we all get together to talk nerdy.